guys, welcome back to Analyzing Horror. My name is Lauren, and in this second episode of my original versus remake series, we'll be discussing the super unsettling paranormal experience, the Amityville Horror. So a couple of newlyweds, George and Kathy Lutz, along with their children, are moving into their surprisingly affordable new home. Despite full disclosure by the real estate agent that the house was a site of a grisly mass murder the year prior, the family disregard this and are excited to make this their forever home. However, their excitement quickly turns to horror as they start to experience strange, inexplicable manifestations that start to physically and mentally affect everyone living in the house as well as anyone that's visiting. And the family began to be continuously terrorized by demonic forces. So fair warning, I'm going to be talking about the storyline and some spoilers for both of these movies. So if you haven't seen them yet, make sure to pause, go watch the movies, and come back afterwards. Alright, let's start off by talking about the 1979 original and what I liked about it. So first off, I really loved that opening scene. It was incredibly harrowing and disturbing. I like how in the opening, we witnessed the murders from the exterior, whereas when the new family is touring the home, we get some jarring flashes of all the murders on the interior. I really love how that sets an ominous tone for the movie right off the bat. Frankly, all of those jarring shots of the murders while this cute couple is looking at this home is really unsettling to me, and it actually makes my shoulders tense up every time I watch this movie. And I'm instantly already deeply distressed for this family, and they haven't even moved in yet. I also loved how this movie gives us so many zoom in and zoom out shots of the house. I really liked how the movie portrayed the house as a character within itself. And with just the camera movements, lighting, and the score, you're able to understand how insidious this house is. Speaking of which, I absolutely love the look of the house with the little slanted windows that look like evil eyes menacingly staring down at you. It's become infamous in a classic horror set design at this point that's based off the original house, of course, and I just really love the look of it. Both the exterior as well as the interior. I just thought it was a really beautiful house, but also deeply unsettling. Also, like I said earlier, I absolutely love the score in this movie. My absolute favorite is the creepy lullaby-like main theme song. I love how at the very beginning that song is just playing while the credits are rolling, and it just gives you a deeply unsettling feeling before anything happens. And I just really love when a score can do that for a movie, and it just really enhances all the scares and just the entire environment. I also really love that scene where the priest is trying to bless the house. Like, this scene deeply gets under my skin. All of the flies and the buzzing noises just really set me on edge. And then when that demonic voice tells him to get out. Also, this is the first time that we get to see how powerful the evil entities in the house are, and I just thought it was a really unsettling scene. Also, I felt so bad for this poor priest. Like, not only were the evil forces in this house completely ruthless to him, but his own church won't help him or the family that he's trying to help. And not only that, they straight up just don't believe him. Like, he has physical marks on him, and by the end of this movie, the man goes blind, and it's so frustrating, and I feel so bad for him. Like, he's just utterly helpless throughout this movie. I also really enjoyed all the scenes with the daughter and Jody, her little ghostly friend. I'd like to think that all of the scenes with the daughter and Josie are really creepy, but I really enjoyed the babysitter in the closet one. That one was really intense. And then my favorite one was when Kathy walked into her daughter's room and her daughter was all, "Oh, you scared Jody. She flew out of the window." And then when Kathy goes over to the window to look out, she sees two reflective eyes staring right back at her. Despite the effects being so minimal, it's just two reflective eyes and darkness in a window. Like, it scares the absolute hell out of me. I don't know, there's just something about this scene, the proximity of the eyes close to Kathy, and just like you can't see anything but the eyes, and it really gets under my skin. Super creepy. I also thought George's change in personality and ultimate possession added a lot of tension, especially in that second act. I also thought James Brolin did a really great job portraying the significant change in this character's personality. And it's just the fact that one of the family members have been fully infiltrated by these evil forces makes me all the more concerned for this family. And lastly, that entire third act and that final night at the house was so intense and scary. I loved all of the special effects during this section of the movie with the walls bleeding and all of the things that the evil forces do to try to keep the family in the house. I also really loved how George was able to snap himself out of the possession at a certain point, and he was able to get his entire family out of the house. But once he gets his family to the car, he realizes he forgot the family dog, so he goes back in to get get the dog. And both he and the dog are able to escape, and the entire family are able to flee successfully with their lives. So there's honestly not really anything I could say that I disliked about this movie. I basically loved everything about it. Although if I were to say anything, I'd have to emphasize how much I felt bad for that poor priest. I just can't get over how he goes to the church, and not only do they not believe him, but they are unwilling to help him or the family. And then by the end of this movie, the man has lost his eyesight, and nothing good has happened for this poor character, and I just feel so bad for him. All right, let's move on to the 2005 remake and what I liked about it. First off, I thought Ryan Reynolds did an incredible job as George. I've mostly seen him in comedic or dramatic roles, so it's always really nice seeing him in a horror movie. And I wish he'd do more, because again, he did such a great job as George. I loved how he went from a very sweet and loving husband to this incredibly violent and menacing character. And he was incredibly convincing and genuinely scary at times. Also, just to say, his physique that was being shown off in the movie was very impressive. Bravo, Ryan. I also really loved how the movie gave us so many aerial shots of the house as well as the entire property. I just thought they're aesthetically pleasing, in addition to the straight-on shots where we get the infamous slanted eye-like windows. I also kind of loved how this movie had so much more gore and violence. Like, all of George's nightmares were genuinely frightening, and that other scene where George is exploring that little red room behind the basement wall, that scene was so gory, so disturbing, and I just thought it was really well done. I also thought it was interesting that this version went into a little bit more information on the history of the house's property as well as the original owner. The guy basically tortured Native Americans and did demonic rituals, and if that were me, I would not want to live a single more night in that house after learning all of that. Like, that is genuinely disturbing. No way. I also kind of loved how different the two movies were when it came to the scares. In the original, the scares are used to slowly build tension to get you to that explosive third act, whereas in the remake, the scares and the paranormal activity starts immediately. They also were way more intense and just animated as a whole, and I just really loved that difference. I will say, at least in my opinion, I think some of the remake scares were a little bit silly, and some were just there to be jump scares, but overall I thought the scares were really well done. Speaking of which, I actually loved the overall differences between the original and the remake. I loved how they were different enough to justify each other's existence. Like, the remake didn't step on the original's toes very much, and I always appreciate that with the remake. Like, there was some overlap, like for example, the priest scene was somewhat similar. But that's to be expected, and I just thought that they were different enough where they felt like their own movie. I also thought all of the scenes where George was slowly being possessed was done really well. Again, Ryan did a fantastic job. His descent into a violent and menacing character was genuinely frightening to witness, and I think even more for me because I know him mostly in comedic roles, so to see him be so truly cruel to his children and his wife is very unsettling. Lastly, this movie also has an explosive third act and final night at the house. And I think my favorite part of this is that they used their boat to get away from the house, whereas in the original they used the car. And I don't know, that little difference was kind of cool. And it was also nice to see them actually use the boat. So on to my dislikes for this one. First of all, George kills the family dog in this version. Like, it's with an axe. I absolutely hated that scene. And in the original, the dog survives. So what the hell, remake? Also, I wasn't a big fan of the CGI in this movie. There was one point where George was possessed. He thought his family had some creepy faces, and like the CGI just didn't work for me. I also wasn't a big fan of all of the jump scares with Jodie. Like, for example, there was this one scene where she was on the closet ceiling while George is standing there, and I just didn't think it looked very impressive, and it's honestly my least favorite scene in the movie. Speaking of which, I absolutely hated the babysitter in this version. Like, she was so annoying and snobby, and I just can't believe that George and Kathy left her with their children. And also, not to judge, but she was scantily clad. Like, what babysitter dresses like that? And like that scene where she was stuck in the closet, like, I don't blame her. I would be scared too, but I was also just like, And lastly, this isn't really a dislike. It's more like I find it unbelievable that the family is able to reconcile after they leave the house at the very end. Like, George is way more menacing in this version. Like, he fully tries to kill everyone several times, and he succeeds in killing the dog. So I just don't know how this family is gonna reconnect and possibly fully forgive George after this experience. And I just don't know if this family is gonna make it in this version. Like, George is so much more menacing in this version. Like, I know he was possessed, but everything that he did, I just don't know if that's forgivable. So again, while it's not a dislike, I just don't know if this version of the family will make it after this experience. So all in all, I have to say that the original is my favorite of the two. I just really loved the set design and the score, all the special effects and scares and sound effects. endings. And I definitely preferred that slightly happier silver lining ending. That being said though, I still really loved the remake. Like I said earlier, I loved how they were both different enough that they felt like their own movies. And with the exception of a few, I really loved the scares. I also loved how it was so much more gory and violent. And I also thought it was cool that we got so much more paranormal activity. And I thought all the nightmare sequences were really creepy. And I just thought Ryan Reynolds did a fantastic job as George. And ultimately, I think there's a lot to love about this remake. And I think both movies are absolutely worth your time. So what did you think about these movies? Do you like one over the other? Are they about even for you? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Also, this is just a reminder that I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. So if you're interested in following me on those and you haven't already, the links are in my description box below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe so Black Phillip knows you'd like to live deliciously. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you again very soon in the next video. Bye!